Welcome to our MVU virtual event on how to utilize CA certificates with the U2 Root Certificate Store. Again, I'm Mike Belmy as your speaker. And to follow along with the demo in this presentation, really you just need Universe or Unidata installed. Version 11.2 or higher for Universe, or 8.1 or higher for Unidata. And a little background on the U2 Root Certificate Store, or U2 RCS. It was introduced Universe 11.2 and Unidata 8.1 as the minimums. So that's where it was introduced. The main use is really with call HTTP and just communicating with external sites or servers during an SSL handshake to authenticate a peer. Previously, there was no certificate store, so each individual basic program needed access to a local copy of a root or other CA certificate to load in with the add certificate function. That was time-consuming overhead from both an administration and programming perspective. Admins and programmers needed to manage local certificate copies and write them out into every program communicating with a different server, and then loading a certificate copy into a program every time it's run just adds more times to those requests. So the U2 databases really needed a way to manage a library of CA or root certificates similar to how a web browser would function. So the objectives there would be to keep certificates organized in a single place, accessible to only database admins, keep that list loaded into memory for rapid use with requests. No need then to add any certificates into each program manually, though you still can if you want. And this would then cut back on the overhead with a list of the common root certificates preloaded ahead of time. A little on the U2 RCS structure here. So the U2 RCS is actually just this .u2 RCS file that's located in either the Universe home directory or Unidata home directory, and that holds the entire certificate store just in that one file. I believe it's encrypted. If you try to look at it with a text editor, it's just all ciphertext. So the only way to actually manage it and access it is through use of the RCS-man utility. That one's found in the Universe bin or Unidata bin directory. And with that RCS-man utility, I just have the help listed here so you can see what all you can do with it. You can list the U2 RCS contents, import certificates into the U2 RCS, export and delete certificates from the U2 RCS, and you can also put a password protection on the U2 RCS if you want to. I'll do a demo working with RCS-man shortly here. And usually with each point release, Rocket will update the U2 RCS just with the latest root certificates and clear out expired certificates in there. So what happens on new installs of a U2 database, it creates a copy of the U2 RCS, a file named .u2rcs.back. That's in the same UV home or UDT home location. On upgrades, it's a little different. U2 will first check if the .u2rcs has been modified in any way, and there's two paths you go from there. So if there's no modification, then the .u2rcs is replaced with a brand new version that came with whatever version you're installing. And if that .u2rcs has been modified, then the current .u2rcs is kept in place, and the user just receives a message on how to replace it later if that's what they want to do. At the same time, the U2 RCS was added. Also in parallel, we also added this new U2 SSL caching feature, Universe and Unidata. So 11.2 for Universe, 8.1 for Unidata. Purpose there was just to speed up multiple or consecutive requests by keeping context and session data in cache. There are some problems with that on occasion. It can get in the way every now and then. It can cache an expired certificate that was in the U2 RCs despite it already being replaced. For example, if somebody has literally just replaced an expired certificate in that U2 root certificate store with a new updated certificate, then that new one's not going to be picked up in a call HTTP program you have running until that cache is refreshed. So due to the issues that can come up with cache being out of date, there are ways to clear, and like it says here, even turn off caching entirely. Simply closing and reopening a new session will clear cache. Otherwise, cache does just have it's supposed to have a 5-minute lifespan before it gets cleared and rebuilt entirely. So in the security features documentation, we have a section on the U2 SSL cache environment variable. You can set this at the system or user level to control the U2 SSL caching. As you can see there's 3 is the default, where it caches both context and session data. You can go down from there to either just session, just context, or turn cache off entirely if you want to do that. Usually in support, we've really not seen much need to modify this at all, just due to that 5-minute lifespan. But occasionally some sites want to turn it off or modify how it behaves, so we do have that mechanism there to control that. So this demo is going to be fairly short. There's not a whole lot to the RCS man utility, but I'm going to show a little bit about how to work with it, list the contents of the U2 RCS, and then how to delete a certificate or import a certificate as well, and just show you kind of where the .u2 RCS resides. Okay, so to start here, I'm on a Windows install of Universe. Unidata will be pretty much exactly the same as far as the RCS man utility. I've installed Universe to the default path here. So UV home is in C, U2, UV. And if we scroll down here, here's our .u2 RCS file. This is the one single file I mentioned already that holds the entire U2 root certificate store inside. So we're going to be working with, I have a test root certificate that I've created already ahead of time here. So I'm going to show you just how to import that. Well, first we'll list the U2 RCS out. You can see what the listing looks like of the certificates in there and get a certificate count. And then I'll go ahead and import this test root certificate, and then I'll show you how to actually delete that afterwards from the U2 RCS. So first I'm going to launch a Windows command prompt with run as administrator here. I did mention RCS man is an admin utility or root utility on Unix and Linux. So we'll cd over to the Universe bin directory and just run RCS man -help first so you can get a feel for the options here. So you can list out all the certificates by alias, subject, issuer, serial, fingerprint, or just a verbose listing if you want. Same thing on import. You can import by alias, it looks like. You can import by just a file name, which is actually what I'm going to do here, just importing this file from the OS level. There's 3 different formats we support, so PEM, DIR, and PKCS12. That's a newer one we've added support for in recent years. And also export certificates, so if there's a certificate in the U2 RCS you want a copy of at the OS level, you can export it. Delete It's especially good for expired certificates, because once they expire, your program using that root certificate is going to be picking up an expired one and likely giving you an error. And it can password protect the U2 RCs if you want to do that for a little extra added security. So to start here, I'm just going to give you a look at this certificate, double clicking it at the OS level here on Windows. Not much to it. Its alias is just test root cert. Subject here, just Rocket U2, my email there, Denver, Colorado. So before I actually import that, I did want to do a listing. So if we just do list here, looks like it just prints alias and fingerprint of 137 root certificates already in the U2 RCs. I did mention we preload that. I believe now we're getting our list from Mozilla. At one point we were getting it from Java, the CA certs file. I think we've moved on to Mozilla as providing the list. So anyway, this version I'm at comes with 137 certificates already in there. So this is Universe 11.3.2. And one more listing I wanted to do. Verbose, so you can see what that looks like. Obviously you can redirect output to a text file or something if you want to do that. I've actually already done that over here in another window ahead of time. So that's what it looks like, just pretty much all the info on each different certificate in there. So what I'm going to show now is how to import, oops. So we're going to do an import of just file, the file option, and give it the file path and name here. So as you saw, there was 137 certificates already loaded in. So rcsman minus import minus file, and we'll copy the path here, paste that in, and test root.cer. Alright, looks like it was imported successfully. It set a default alias test root cert, and we now have 138 certificates in there. So if I did that listing again, you'd see it somewhere in that listing. I'm going to just show real quick how to delete that now, if you wanted to get rid of a certificate. So if we go back to the help, you're going to look at delete. You can use any one of these options. There is a little caveat here because I tried earlier before I went on to this demo to match, if we look at the certificate here, I tried to match thumbprint or fingerprint. It's the same thing. I tried just using this number copied, and that actually did not work, because if we look at the list here, you can see the fingerprint that's the same as thumbprint is actually in a little different format when it's written into the U2 RCs. It has a colon every 2 characters. So that if you want to list out the U2 RCs, you'd need to copy this exact number for fingerprint. I'm just going to do it by alias, it's a little easier. But just be aware of that if you're trying to delete a certificate by serial number or thumbprint, fingerprint, then you need to match what's in here. Looks like a lot of these don't have a serial number. Some do. I'm not sure why exactly, but that's why we're going to use alias here. Makes it a little easier. And I already know the alias for this since I looked at it prior to doing this. So RCS man minus delete minus alias, and I'll do it in quotes since it does have spaces, test root cert. I believe that's what it was. Yep. Okay, so if you get an output like this, then you've done it correctly. It found a matching certificate with that search value, so the alias of test root cert. Like I said, there's how it prints the thumbprint or fingerprint. If you wanted to compare that to the certificate here. A little different. So you need to match it how it shows up in the actual U2 RCS, rather than if you look at just a Windows output of that thumbprint. Anyhow, we'll do a yes here. I'm sure I want to delete that. One certificate deleted, and looks like it was successful, and we're back to 137 in there.